Elspeth woke with a scream. Her nightdress clung to her skin, damp with sweat. The blanket was twisted around her feet like a rope. She pulled it off, gasping for breath. The dream was still fresh in her mind. She had been standing in a wide field with no trees, no houses, nothing. Only earth that moved under her shoes. When she looked down, she saw worms crawling everywhere. Thousands of them, wriggling and twisting. Some climbed onto her hands. Others slithered into her mouth. In the dream, she tried to shout, but no voice came out. Only more worms. Now, sitting up in her bed, Elspeth touched her lips. They were clean. There were no worms. But her stomach rolled in a strange way, like hunger but not hunger. She turned to her husband, Rowan. He was still asleep, his chest rising and falling. Peaceful, as if nothing was wrong in the world. Elspeth lay back down and stared at the ceiling. She didn't tell him. She couldn't. Elspeth had been married to Rowan for only 3 months. They lived in a seaside town called Windmere, in a small but neat house not far from the water. The air always smelled of salt and seaweed. Rowan worked at a shipping company. He left early in the morning and returned in the evening, tired but smiling. Elspeth stayed home, trying to make the house warm and cheerful. But inside her, something was changing. At first, she thought it was pregnancy cravings. She would open the fridge, stare at cheese, fruit, bread, and none of it made sense to her. She wanted something else. Something she couldn't name. One afternoon, while digging in the garden behind the house, she saw a worm wriggling in the soil. A strange thought entered her mind. What if I ate it? Her heart raced. She shook her head, afraid of herself. But that night the dream returned. Worms wriggling, slipping into her mouth. She woke up again, trembling. One Saturday, Rowan tossed her the keys to a sleek black car parked in front of their house. "Do you remember this?" he asked. Elspeth smiled faintly. Of course she remembered. The car was his wedding gift to her. On that day, guests had clapped as she climbed inside, her veil brushing the seat. It was supposed to be a symbol of joy. But now, when she touched the keys, her hand felt cold. She drove it to the market that morning. Halfway down the road, the car gave a sudden jerk and stopped. Elspeth stepped out, her hands shaking. The street was empty except for a thin line crawling across the road. Worms. Dozens of them, twisting and wriggling, sliding under the wheels of the car. She blinked, and they were gone. When the mechanic, Mr. Wilford, arrived, the car started perfectly. "No problem at all," he said. But Elspeth couldn't forget what she had seen. Days turned into weeks. Elspeth's secret hunger grew worse. One evening, while Rowan was still at work, she sat in the garden again. The soil was damp from rain. Slowly, carefully, she pulled out a worm. It writhed in her palm. Her stomach twisted with both disgust and desire. "No, I can't," she whispered. But another voice in her head said, "Just one." She lifted it to her lips. The taste was earthy, slimy, alive. She shuddered. Then she swallowed. Her body relaxed. For the first time in weeks, she felt full. When Rowan came home, he found her cheerful, even humming as she cooked dinner. He smiled, happy to see her mood change. He never guessed what she had eaten only an hour before. Elspeth went to the market early in the morning. She walked past the fruit stalls, past the meat section, past the bright piles of tomatoes and peppers. None of it drew her in. But when she passed a fish cellar, she stopped. Beside the fish tubs, a boy sat with a rusty tin full of wriggling worms, fishing bait. He scooped them with his fingers and placed them in little paper bags for customers. Elspeth's heart raced. Her lips parted. She wanted them. "Madam?" the boy asked, looking up at her. His voice was small but curious. "Do you need some?" Elspeth's cheeks burned. She shook her head quickly and hurried away. As she walked, she thought she heard whispers following her through the market stalls. Take them, you know you want." She turned sharply. No one was there. Just the crowd. Just normal voices bargaining for food. But Elspeth felt her stomach clench with need. Rowan noticed changes in his wife. She grew pale, her eyes shadowed. She hardly touched the food he brought home. Some nights, he found her standing in the kitchen in the dark, staring at nothing. "Elspeth," he said one evening, taking her hands. "You're not yourself. What's wrong? Are you ill?" She forced a smile. "I'm fine. It's just moods. You know, I'll be all right." But Rowan didn't believe her. He lay awake at night, watching her shift in her sleep, whispering strange words, her hands twitching as if grasping for something unseen. He thought of taking her to the doctor, but she begged him not to. "I don't need a doctor, Rowan. I promise. Just give me time." He kissed her forehead, but inside his heart tightened with worry. That night, Elspeth crept into the garden while Rowan slept. The moonlight lit the damp soil. She knelt, her fingers digging eagerly, quickly, until they found the soft, wriggling bodies beneath. One worm, then another, then another. She stuffed them into her mouth, chewing, swallowing, tears running down her face. "Why am I like this?" she whispered. But the more she asked, the deeper her hunger grew. Suddenly, she heard a sound. A creak, like someone stepping on the wooden porch. Her head snapped up. Rowan stood in the doorway, his face pale in the moonlight. "Elspeth!" His voice was soft, full of shock. "What are you doing?" Her hands froze, covered in soil. Worms squirmed between her fingers. She opened her mouth to explain, but no words came. Only silence. Rowan blinked hard. For a moment, in the pale silver moonlight, he could have sworn he saw his wife crouched in the dirt, soil smeared on her face, worms wriggling between her fingers. But when he stepped closer, the picture shifted. Elspeth was standing now, brushing her hands against her nightdress. She looked startled, yes, but not monstrous. There were no worms in sight. Just a young woman in her garden at midnight. I thought I heard something," she whispered quickly. "A sound. I came to check." Her eyes darted away from his, nervous. Rowan swallowed. His chest tightened. "Elspeth, are you sure?" "Yes," she said firmly. "You must have been dreaming. Go back to bed." Rowan stood for a long moment, searching her face. Something in him wanted to press, to demand the truth. But another part of him, perhaps the part that still remembered their wedding vows, the laughter they once shared, wanted to believe her. Finally, he nodded. "All right." He went back inside. But as he lay in bed, he could not shake the picture in his mind. Worms glistening in her hands, her lips moving as though tasting something unthinkable. Elspeth stayed outside a little longer, breathing hard. Her hands still trembled with desire. The worms still wriggled in her stomach, alive inside her, as though whispering. She crouched down again and pressed her ear to the soil. At first, she heard nothing but the ocean wind. Then, slowly, a faint voice stirred beneath the earth. "Eat." She jerked back, her heart pounding. "No," she whispered. "I won't." But the voice came again, stronger this time, rising from the soil like a pulse. "Eat. Take more. You belong to us." Elspeth covered her ears. Tears filled her eyes. "I don't belong to anyone," she said fiercely. I'm not a monster." But even as she spoke, her stomach churned with hunger again. A deep, gnawing hunger that no bread, no meat, no fruit could satisfy. The next morning, Rowan left early for work at the docks. Elspeth stayed home, her body weak from the night's secret feast. While dusting the shelves, her hand brushed against a loose plank at the back of the cupboard. Curious, she pulled it free. Behind it was an old, folded envelope, yellow with age. Her breath caught. It was addressed to Margaret Elwood, her late mother. Hands trembling, Elspeth opened it. The ink was faded, but the words stabbed her like thorns. To break the hunger, the child must never taste the earth. For once the soil touches her tongue, the craving will never end. Elspeth froze. The words blurred in her eyes. The child. Was that her? She sank to the floor, clutching the letter. A cold truth trickled into her heart. Her mother had known. Her mother had warned someone. And Elspeth had already tasted. That night, Rowan sat at the table, watching Elspeth push her food around her plate. "You've hardly eaten again," he said gently. She forced a smile. "I'm just not hungry." Rowan's eyes narrowed. "You're wasting away, Elspeth. There's something wrong. I keep seeing things." He paused, shaking his head. "Maybe I'm just tired, but sometimes I feel you're hiding something from me." Elspeth's heart thundered. She wanted to tell him about the letter, about the hunger, about the worms. But how could she? He would look at her like she was mad. So she only whispered, "I'm fine, Rowan." Truly. But Rowan did not look convinced. That night, Elspeth lay awake. The letter burned in her mind. Slowly, memories crept back, memories she had long pushed away. She was 7 years old again, sitting on the floor of her mother's cottage. Her mother knelt before her, voice sharp with fear. "Elspeth, never put that in your mouth. Do you hear me? Never. You are not like other children." But little Elspeth had been stubborn. She remembered sneaking into the garden when her mother wasn't watching. She remembered picking up a fat, damp worm. She remembered biting into it. The taste had been strange, but good. And her mother's scream, shrill, broken, still echoed in her ears. Elspeth's memory deepened. She saw the cottage again, small, damp, with its thatched roof and narrow rooms. But one room had always been locked. Her mother kept the key on a chain around her neck. "Elspeth," her mother had warned one stormy night, "if I am not here, you must never open that door. Promise me." "I promise, Mama," little Elspeth had whispered. But promises are fragile things. One afternoon, while her mother was away, Elspeth found the key resting on the table. It glinted like a secret calling her name. She took it. Her small fingers fumbled with the lock until the heavy door creaked open. Inside was a room lined with jars. Jars of dark soil, sealed with wax. Each one had a strange mark drawn across the glass. And in the center, an old wooden box. Curiosity burned through her. She lifted the lid. Inside the box lay a small bundle of cloth. When she unwrapped it, she gasped. A handful of dried worms. The moment Elspeth's mother returned and saw the door ajar, she shrieked. "Elspeth, what have you done?" She grabbed the bundle from her daughter's hands, her face pale with terror. "Did you eat them? Tell me you didn't." Elspeth shook her head quickly, though she had touched them, smelled them, almost placed one on her tongue. Her mother pulled her close, tears streaming down her face. "You don't understand. You were born with the hunger. I tried to stop it. I tried to keep it away, but it will follow you. If you ever eat, even once, it will never leave you." Elspeth had never forgotten the way her mother's hands shook as she clutched her. At the time, she had not believed. But now, years later, the truth was crawling back. Rowan woke to the sound of movement in the kitchen. The clock showed it was past midnight. He padded downstairs quietly. The floorboards creaked under his feet. In the dim glow of the lantern, he saw Elspeth at the sink, her back turned. She was hunched over, shoulders shaking as though she were weeping. "Elspeth," he whispered. She jumped and spun around. Her lips were stained with something dark, her eyes wide with fright. I was just thirsty," she stammered, wiping her mouth with the back of her hand. Rowan's gaze dropped to the floor. The window above the sink had been left open, and below it, a small pile of wet soil clung to the tiles. Something inside him turned cold. The next morning, Rowan tried to act normal. He chopped firewood, fed the hens, and fixed the gate. But all the while, his mind circled back to what he had seen. Elspeth was quiet, avoiding his eyes. At breakfast, he asked gently, "Elspeth, is there something you want to tell me?" She froze, her spoon hovering above the bowl. Then she forced a laugh. "You're imagining things, Rowan." "I'm fine." But Rowan wasn't convinced. He wanted to press her, to demand the truth. Yet he feared what that truth might be. Some secrets, he thought, were darker than a man could bear. Elspeth tried to resist, but the hunger was getting stronger. During the day, she would glance at the garden soil with longing. At night, when Rowan slept, she crept outside, digging with trembling hands until her nails were filled with dirt. Each worm she swallowed filled her with both shame and relief. She hated herself, yet she could not stop. She remembered her mother's words. "If you eat even once, it will never leave you." And she knew now that it was true. One bright afternoon, Rowan came in from the fields carrying good news. "Elspeth," he said cheerfully, "Thomas and his wife have invited us to supper. They say it's time we join the neighbors so they can welcome you properly." Elspeth forced a smile. "That's kind." But her stomach twisted. Supper with neighbors meant food, normal food. Food that no longer satisfied her. Still, she agreed. Refusing would make Rowan suspicious, and she could not let him know. Not yet. That evening, the neighbor's cottage was warm with firelight and laughter. A long wooden table groaned beneath platters of roast chicken, golden bread, and stewed apples. Rowan greeted everyone warmly, his arm around Elspeth. She smiled politely, but her eyes kept drifting toward the soil-filled flower pots by the window. The smell of roasted meat turned her stomach. The laughter of the others rang hollow in her ears. She gripped her spoon tightly, fighting the urge rising inside her. Thomas's wife, Clara, leaned across the table. "Elspeth, do you like the stew? I made it with fresh herbs from the garden." Elspeth forced a nod, spooning the broth into her mouth. It was warm, savory, yet it tasted of nothing. Her hunger deepened. Her hands began to tremble. Her gaze slid again to the flower pots. The soil looked dark, moist. She imagined digging her fingers in, pulling out the writhing creatures she craved. "Elspeth!" Clara's voice broke her trance. Everyone was watching her. Rowan's brow furrowed. Elspeth's lips parted, but instead of answering, a small whimper escaped her throat. She clutched her stomach. Rowan reached for her hand. "Are you all right?" She nodded quickly, rising from her chair. "Excuse me, I just need a moment." She fled to the side room, heart pounding. Inside the darkened side room, Elspeth leaned against the wall, shaking. Her hunger was unbearable now. She spotted a potted plant near the window. With trembling fingers, she dug into the soil. She found one worm, then another. She shoved them into her mouth, chewing quickly, desperately, tears streaming down her face. The taste filled her with both relief and horror. Behind her, a floorboard creaked. "Elspeth!" Rowan's voice was soft but full of dread. She froze, soil still clinging to her. Elspeth turned slowly, her hands filthy, her lips darkened with soil. A worm wriggled between her fingers, and before she could stop herself, she stuffed it into her mouth. Rowan stood in the doorway, pale as ash. His eyes widened with horror, but he could not move. "Elspeth!" his voice cracked. "What are you doing?" Her chest rose and fell quickly. Shame burned her cheeks, yet the craving was stronger. She swallowed the worm and whispered, "I can't stop." Rowan staggered back a step, his hand clutching the doorframe. "You're eating worms?" His voice was low, broken. "Dear God." Tears filled Elspeth's eyes. "I'm sorry. I never wanted you to see me like this." Rowan's face was stricken with disbelief. "How long has this been happening?" Elspeth lowered her gaze. "Since I was a child. My mother warned me. She told me never to taste the soil. But I disobeyed her. And from that day, I've been cursed with this hunger." Rowan's hand trembled. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you'd leave me," she whispered. "Because no one could ever love a monster." Rowan stared at her, torn between love and revulsion. His heart ached for the woman he cherished, but his mind recoiled at the sight before him. The silence between them was heavier than stone. From the dining room came muffled voices. Thomas called out, "Is everything all right in there?" Rowan quickly closed the door, his back against it. "We're fine," he lied, his voice tight. Elspeth wiped her mouth with trembling hands, but the stain of soil remained. "Rowan, please," she begged. "Don't tell them. Don't tell anyone." Rowan's jaw clenched. "I don't know what to do, Elspeth. I don't know what this means. But if others see," he trailed off, unable to finish. Her secret, at last, had been exposed, at least to him. Rowan's breath came fast, his face pale. He had seen Elspeth chewing worms with his own eyes. Every part of him wanted to run, to scream, to tell the neighbors what kind of wife he had married. But when he looked at her trembling hands and the tears sliding down her cheeks, something stronger rose in him, love. "Elspeth," he whispered, voice shaking. "I don't understand what's happening to you. But I won't leave you. Do you hear me? I won't leave." Her head snapped up, hope flickering in her eyes. You still want me? Even after this?" Rowan swallowed hard, forcing himself to nod. "Yes, you're my wife. Whatever this curse is, we'll face it together." She threw herself into his arms, sobbing into his chest. He held her tightly, though his stomach still churned with disgust. When they returned to the dinner table, Elspeth's hair was neatly smoothed, her lips wiped clean. Rowan kept his hand on her shoulder, steady and protective. Clara smiled politely. "Everything all right?" Rowan forced a smile. "Just a little sickness. Nothing to worry about." The neighbors nodded and returned to their food, though Thomas gave Rowan a curious look that lingered too long. Rowan barely touched his plate. He kept stealing glances at Elspeth, who sat stiffly, her face pale, her appetite gone. That night, back in their cottage, Rowan sat by the fire while Elspeth lay on the bed. "Rowan," she said quietly, "you shouldn't have to carry this with me. It would be easier if you just left." He turned sharply, eyes burning. "Don't ever say that again. I vowed before God and man to stay with you. I will not abandon you, curse or no curse." Elspeth's lips trembled. "But how will we live like this? What if someone else sees? What if?" She trailed off, staring into the shadows. Rowan reached for her hand. "Then we hide it. We keep it between us until we can find an answer. You're not alone anymore, Elspeth." Her eyes softened. For the first time in many weeks, she felt a sliver of peace. Elspeth's hunger grew worse each week. Rowan tried everything, locking away food, staying by her side, even praying over her at night. But sometimes he would wake to find her gone, only to discover her in the garden, digging with her bare hands, mouth stained with soil and worm flesh. He still held her close afterwards. He whispered, "You're not a monster. You're my wife." But in his heart, he knew she was slipping away. One evening, the neighbors came unannounced. Clara had seen Elspeth crouched in the yard, swallowing something from the earth. They whispered to Rowan with fear. Your wife is cursed, Thomas said. If you don't stop her, the whole town will know. Rowan's chest tightened. He realized he could no longer protect her forever. That night, Rowan found Elspeth trembling on the floor, a pile of worms scattered around her. Her eyes were wild, her lips blackened with soil. Rowan, she whispered, broken. I can't fight it anymore. I don't want you to see me like this. Tears ran down his cheeks. He knelt and cradled her in his arms. I promised I'd never leave you, he said softly. And I won't. But I can't let them take you away either. He kissed her forehead. Then, with shaking hands, he pressed the pillow gently over her face as she wept against him. Her last words were muffled but clear. Thank you for loving me. The next morning, Rowan buried her quietly in the garden where she used to dig. When the neighbors asked, he told them Elspeth had fallen ill and passed in her sleep. No one questioned him. But Rowan stayed by the grave every night, whispering stories to the earth, as if she could still hear him. The garden grew strangely lush, worms wriggling thick beneath the soil. And though Rowan never told a soul, sometimes, when the hunger gnawed in his belly, he wondered if the curse had chosen him next.